Yeah, I think I still very much love math. It's something I fell in love with in the most organic sort of way through puzzles and so on at a very young age. But I did realize at some point that I don't think I can see myself doing math as a profession or as a career because research in mathematics can be often very distant from the real world. And well, most things in maths come around to application at some point, but it isn't as immediate as I felt like I would like. Um, and biology was still interesting. In my winter quarter, I ended up taking this bioengineering class where we got to build a microbial fermenter from the ground up. And so we got to do mechanical, electrical engineering, all the sort of pieces of it. And that class excited me in a way nothing else ever has, because even in the times when it was the most difficult, I just wanted to keep working at it, keep hacking at the circuits to kind of get things done. So I'm currently thinking of bioengineering as a career option. And I think in some sense that does act as the intersection of math and bio, some of the other things I was interested in back when,
Wonderful.
yeah.
This sounds fun because I think you mentioned building something from ground up. So can you explain a little bit more what bioengineering? You've got a peek into it, but what exactly you feel bioengineering is all about?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of different things going on in the field these days. I really think this is the next few years will be the bioengineering boom, so to say. But broadly, I would say you have the computational aspects, which is so the pandemic is going on. How do you make a model for the pandemic, right? So many people have tried and failed to do that. And then on the other hand, you have the more physical technology aspects, which is something like how do you design a ventilator? Um, and how do you go through the testing to make sure something works to the degree where it can be used on humans in a medical setting? Um, so that's another aspect of it. And
That's
there's also a
great.
lot going on these days at the molecular level with gene
Mhm.
editing and so on, which I have yet to learn about, but I hear is very exciting.
Fantastic. In fact, I've been interviewing many students over the last 2 weeks, and there are a few who have done bioengineering at a fairly high level. I'd love to make those introductions happen. And those are panels I think we'll probably want to do in the future and invite you on those too. My next question is about gen ed classes, and of course, Stanford is a kind of environment where you can totally immerse yourself in learning anything you want. So, what are the most interesting things you've done or you've heard your friends do as taking classes or learning new things by just attending a lecture, a random lecture?
Hmm. I think my most the out of the box classes that have really helped me grow the most have been my English and my creative art, like performing arts classes. So my first quarter itself, I decided to take introduction to acting because acting was always something that like I saw people do and it looked interesting, but it never fit into it didn't fit into what my college application was all about. So sort of 10th through 12th grade, I didn't end up doing any of it. And that itself, so my first quarter, most of my classes were either gen ed or intro classes, right? Like intro to calculus, classes which are traditionally taken only by freshmen. And this acting class was a class where I got to meet people from the business school, people, graduate students, um, people from different years, different majors. And so it truly just let me see a view of Stanford beyond freshman and intro classes. And then my spring quarter, I took a writing class, which had a similar effect of connecting people from different schools, different majors, and letting us see the world through each other's eyes, which was super meaningful.
Fascinating. Yeah, so that's understanding the human condition and sort of having a better sort of aggregation of kind of people there are in that community. Fascinating meeting graduate students, business students. Uh, did that change anything for you? Did that sort of steer you to think of your being at Stanford a little differently?
I think it definitely provided perspective in that it you see different people at different stages in their career, and you that does to some extent incite a thought process of, well, where do I want to be when I'm at that age? And in fact, I recently spoke to a journalism major. She's going to graduate at the end of, well, I think she just graduated, right? And journalism was something I never thought before. I knew there were people who were journalists, but I never thought of that as something I or somebody close to me could choose as a career. Um, and so that that was a new sort of avenue that I was exposed to, right? And I have been writing for the school newspaper, so one never knows.
That's good. In fact, that's something I wanted to know when we met earlier in the winter. The writing bit, what happened to that? Did you continue this quarter? And what is your contribution to the student newspaper at Stanford?
Yeah,
Is it the
I think
Stanford
writing
Daily?
diverged a lot. I've tried probably 4 or 5 different types of writing in the last 9 months. I was on a slam poetry team for a bit. I took this creative nonfiction class, which is sort of essays, which they deal with nonfiction material or personal life stories, but in a creative way, like a memoir, that kind of writing. And then for the school newspaper, I messed around a little bit with satire writing earlier in the quarter, but this quarter I've really just dived into news writing heavily. And so I've been covering things like the way different groups on campus have been impacted by the pandemic, because there are special concerns that apply to international students or lecturers versus tenured faculty or graduate students that don't apply to the rest of the community. And so I've kind of picked up those articles where we get to pick one of these groups, and see what kind of activism is going on for that group, what more needs to be done. And that's really also provided a way to engage with the community more than I could before.
You've seen it all, it seems, in one like 12-month period at Stanford. It's been a quite a whirlwind of a year. Uh, what is the sense that you get in terms of the future of higher ed, and what is Stanford thinking, Stanford University sort of as administration thinking as the path to the future of education?
So, in a more immediate sense, I do think it's worth sharing Stanford's plan for the fall because it's one of the more creative solutions out there. So, they intend to expand the academic year to encapsulate 4 quarters. So, they're just going to loop the summer in. And then they want to have 2 out of 4 classes on campus every quarter, which will give every class 2 quarters on campus. And so that I thought was a very creative solution that Stanford's the only one to have confirmed. I heard Harvard is considering it, but no confirmation yet.
But does that work for international students?
Well, that's a big concern, because my biggest fear right now is that they tell sophomores to come in the fall, but India doesn't open up its borders, and then my friends are all on campus doing their classes in person, and I'm still over Zoom. So that's a definite concern.
Right. So you got really involved. I'm going back to your engagement in activities. So it seemed that the newspaper and some of the fun extra classes that you took beyond math and biology uh, also gave you a different sort of perspective and also a sort of place in the community. But is there something else that you have been doing? I know there's a tumbleweed project or something that you're part of, or is that on your
What
resume?
project?
Is it the tumbleweed something? Is there a Mars mission?
Oh, so I haven't been as involved in that as I would have liked to, but essentially there's a group of engineers on campus who are working to build a unique Mars rover, which is structurally like a tumbleweed. It's super light, it's super mobile. And the traditional issue with Mars rovers is that they'll cover like 200 kilometers in the span of 5 years. They're super, super, super slow. Um, and but you get a high degree of control over the rover. So, and this company's um, their thought is maybe we're okay having less degree of control over the rover if it can cover a larger terrain over time. And so they're working to create these rovers that essentially just they follow the wind current, so you really can't control where they're going, but they can cover the entire surface of Mars possibly in a span of 5 years. And so for
So
very basic
each college
variables.
has a
Huh?
team, and so each college has a team, and you have to sort of do something every year or every term,
Oh, so
probably.
actually, one of the people from my batch came in with this as a startup from high school, and he's been running this um, throughout his high school experience. And he was at Stanford. He was like, "There's a bunch of smart people here, so let me try and um, recruit from on campus and get people at Stanford involved." So that's how I got involved. but it is a very serious engineering endeavor. And so I don't think I yet have the skill set to fully contribute to that. But it's good to know and be associated with the organization.